Get the Intel, the podcast meant for those of us trying to find out what the hell is going on in the field. Here, we discuss tools, techniques, and approaches that you can implement to streamline operations and let you focus on your craft.
Dan Gill here. I'm the host of the Get the Intel podcast, where I talk with leaders in contracting, management, and really anyone helping us do business better. This episode is brought to you by Workforce Recon. Workforce Recon is a project tracking software that connects the office to the field crews. Their app, Field Recon, is built with a field-first mentality. Developed by contractors for contractors, it includes time and asset tracking, messaging, job documentation, and scheduling, all in one place so you can see what's going on in the field. So if you're tired of finding out what happened days later, check us out at workforcerecon.com and see your operations in real time. Joining me today is Carlos Cuevas, who is a virtual project manager at Concreate. He has over 13 years of experience in project management, is a certified PMP, and is based out of Tijuana, Mexico. He also happens to work with me at Concrete. So, Carlos, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you being a willing victim for this. Kind of talk to us a little bit about outsourced project management.
It's a pleasure, Chad. It's been a pleasure for a while now.
Well, fantastic, man. So how did you what is like your background story? Like, how do you come to project management?
Well, it was by quote unquote chance and just looking for it. I used to work at a manufacturing facility that did furniture, and there was no project manager on site, but the need for one arose. The owner saw, I guess, qualities in me that he saw at different companies that had project managers, and he said, "You know what? We should train you. I think you should be good at this." And they did. They trained me. I started doing project management work while I trained, and we kicked it off. After maybe a year and a half, we had myself and another 3 project managers working there. So yeah, that's how it started 13 years ago. I met my wife there, by the way.
Oh, I know. So and that's right. So you have a wife, 2 daughters. You live in Tijuana, and is there other family around you or no?
Yeah.
Your brother's nearby. I know that.
Yeah, my brother and my sister both live in Tijuana, and also my mom and dad. They live here and in San Diego. They cross the border maybe a couple times a week.
Oh wow! I thought you could say a year, but no, you're like a week.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're not far from, like, how far are you from San Diego?
Oh, maybe a couple of miles, 2, 3 at the most.
Wow.
Yeah.
And San Diego itself is what, 70 miles wide? It seems like it's ginormous.
Yeah, no, it's not far away. The problem is crossing the border. The wait times are like 3 hours on a good day, 6 on a bad one.
Is it because of COVID, or is that just always the way it's been?
Oh, that's always. But don't you even think about crossing the border in Christmas time. You're going to spend half your day. When I say half your day, it's like 12 hours to cross the border around Christmas time. That week before Christmas, it's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hang on. So you're doing project management side of a furniture manufacturing facility. Then you branch out and you start doing project management for hotel chains. Is that right? You're doing a construction company for hotels.
The hospitality industry. I changed to that position. An opportunity arose, and I took it. And it was a company that did remodels and brand new hotels. That's basically what they did, and it was very interesting. It's a completely different world from the manufacturing, but there's something good about project management is that at the end of the day, you manage a project based on the needs of it. So if you don't need to pour in 1,000 resources to manage a project, you don't have to. So it's a very easy way of either managing a big scale, large project or small scale. At the end of the day, the resources are based on what you need to accomplish. So that was really good.
And that was your first virtual position at that time?
Yes, it was. And for most of the people, it's like a challenge doing it virtually just because they're not accustomed to it. I wasn't, but I fell into it very nicely just because I'm really good at staying at home and having like my own space. Or My wife is very good at having me at home 24/7. It's really good. I mean, for me, if I go into the office, yes, I can stay there and do my work, but most of the time I'm just with my headphones and I don't pay attention to the rest of the environment around me. So being at home is actually, it feels like home. So
Oh. So what was it like when you're trying to go from, okay, I'm on site and I've got a problem with a project, I can go and put my hands on it, and then into I'm off site, I can't physically be there. Like what kind of challenges do you run into that way?
well, it's the challenge has been the same all across the board is not being able to go physically into a job site. The first thing that comes to mind is we're very accustomed to using our senses, right? One of them is our eyes, which are the most important ones, right? But you always get complimented by your teammates. So if you're doing a hotel in Cancun and you can't go, then well, there's always like a bunch of people there that you can call, and especially with today's technology. Back in the day was a little bit tougher because videos didn't they didn't do justice to what you were supposed to be seeing, and the video quality wasn't there. Nowadays, you have 4 or 5G, and you could just take a video of anything, and the amount of detail that you can see on it is way better nowadays than it was before. So the main challenges was that if you can't see it, then you need to trust someone else to see it for you, and that feedback and documentation needs to be on point.
And that's something that, when you talk about documentation, obviously, um, Field Recon, the sponsor of this, is that's part of what they do, is try to document job processes, job photos. The idea of in construction now being litigious, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen. Whether you have a building standing there or not, if it says you didn't build it, if it doesn't say you built it, you didn't build it. So it's like contrary to reality. But so does it force you to do further documentation, better documentation, because you have to operate by processes rather than being able to just kind of, I guess I feel like sometimes, and it's one that we looked at, it was kind of a crutch to be able to just jump out and run to a job site. And it's like, oh, I'll just go check it out myself. This kind of forces you to be a better managed company, I think, from time to time. It has its caveats.
Yeah, no, of course. And at the end of the day, it does come down to documentation, because if you can't prove, like you said, if you can't prove that something happened, then it didn't. And there's also a certain level of trust that you need to put in to the field operators, right? Because I mean, it's not as easy. Well, it is as easy as jumping in, grab a plane, and be there, either in a couple of hours or next day, right? So you can see it yourself. But it's not a cost effective for anyone, regardless if you're a on the field project manager or if you're a remote one like myself. Most of the issues don't require anyone to be flying anywhere or just being on site. I could be in Richmond right now, and I could easily just do a FaceTime call with someone over in DC or New York or North Carolina. I don't even have to drive. I mean, realistically, no one should have to drive. You could just do a FaceTime call with the super there and say, "Hey, what's the issue? Send me a couple of pictures. Let me document them, and I'll send my guys to either fix it or just have a further look if what we're discussing doesn't match. If you're seeing something that I'm not, then obviously, yeah, we're gonna have to send someone there. But otherwise, you don't have to."
I think that's something that we found that one of the silver linings coming out of the COVID scenario was you really had to limit the amount of people you were sending to a site. Transportation was more difficult. Everything pushed us towards the idea that we need to be doing remote, whether it was virtual or outsourced or anything else, but we needed to be remote as much as possible because people were working from home. There was a lot of, especially early on in the pandemic, you were scared to be places. And so I think that's what pushed us at Concreate into, we've got to do this. Well, two things really. One, we were forced to be remote and we learned to be good at it. And then second was the fact that we needed a project manager, and we needed a good one, and we needed to find them, and they've got jobs, and so using a virtual or a remote project manager allowed us to recruit really worldwide, a huge pool of people compared to those that are willing to commute to an office in their location.
Yeah, and the other thing is that pool that you have now, that the availability and the talent out there, it's amazing. I mean, there's so many organizations that just realized they don't even need a physical office anymore. I mean, there's a whole bunch of companies that realize we don't need this office space. The amount of money that they're saving by just closing 80% of the workspace, because one, people are happy at home, they're productive, and just being able to save that amount of money in office space was great. And realizing that also the amount of time that each individual spends by commuting to work. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about San Diego. I'm just going to talk about Tijuana. But here, if you want to go anywhere, it's an hour lost.
Yeah.
That's 2 hours of your day back and forth, plus another 2 hours for you to get ready to go to the office. That's 4 hours of your day gone daily. So it's, if you can give someone the option to do it remotely and they're good at it and they're being productive, or even more productive because you can just pick up the phone or your computer and do some, light work in the evening if you want to get ahead of on, tomorrow's schedule and whatnot, you're able to. Why not? And it's a realization for a lot of companies. Obviously, Concrete was ahead of the curve on that part, and I think it worked out fine.
Yeah. And so what is when you see it work well, do you, working, having a couple of positions like this now, what do you see and you go, okay, this is key to making this kind of position work well? And then what do you see are big pitfalls where people just don't do well with it?
I would say to make it work, you need to have, like I said before, a certain level of trust on your teammates. Just being sure that you're going to be able to delegate something and it's going to be done as intended. The other thing is communication and documentation is of paramount importance, just because if you don't communicate what you need well, you might be saying the right words, but people might not hear what you're trying to accomplish. So just being super careful on that part and being able to document everything that you need to. That's like the most important thing. Downfalls, it's not for everyone. I'm super happy being able to stay at my house, with my my wife, my daughters. To me, being at home is priceless, right? And it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. You need to have your own space that if I can just close the door, and I know, and obviously my wife knows, unless the house is burning down, no one knocks on the door. And to me, this is my office space. And in a sense, it is.
So that would be definitely one of the things you say is, when you're looking for somebody in this position, you need them to have, solid internet. You need them to have good camera, good equipment, a dedicated space. I think is probably pretty important so that somebody can be effective in these types of positions. Culturally, you got to imagine that especially smaller contractors that haven't done a lot of this, you're going to be resistant. They're going to say, well, this is great and everything, but it's not for us. We couldn't do this. And, is there, does culture play into it? Have you seen, where that comes into it? I mean, there's different people all throughout the United States too. So, I mean, I don't know if it ever plays into what you're doing, but I mean,
I would say maybe. Culture might vary throughout the U.S., but it also varies throughout Mexico. I mean, you certainly there's a lot more open-minded people working or living in the north part of Mexico than it is in the south. Um, it might be the case also in the U.S. But if you can see past through it and just look at the talent as it is, then yeah, I mean it shouldn't be an issue, but sometimes it might. As long as you're willing to see the people for what they are and what they can accomplish for your company, I think you're good.
I think ideally, whether you're remote or you're in office, that should be a core value. That should be something you should value people for what they are, regardless of where they're currently sitting, where they live, where they grew up, or anything else along that lines. It's part of who they are, but it's not the value that companies should be looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, not in our opinion, anyway. But no, so that's pretty cool, and I'll tell you, I have enjoyed having you there. And from my side, working with a remote project manager has just been huge, and it did force us to document a lot of our processes much better. We do a lot of Zoom meetings or virtual meetings, like this. We've upgraded the equipment that we use to do that. And you say, okay, well, that's an additional expense. Yeah, but you don't have we don't have to have office space for it. We don't have to have commuter time. We don't run into tolls and things like that. We only ever had to buy you company shirts because we don't ever see anything below your chest anyway. So I mean, right there was no boots, no pants, So I mean, it's just there's a lot of things that go off on it. I think the advice I would give people is that you're still an employee. You're still a vital member of a team, and you can't isolate them and not leave you. And I hope you don't feel that way in our company or in any of the places you are. But I think that is tough to maintain. You have to be very purposeful about company culture. You have to have a company culture that brings people in from a virtual atmosphere, I think. And have you seen anybody that's doing it really well? I mean, I'm not fishing for a compliment, but like, how do you help a virtual or a remote employee feel like they're part of an in-house team?
By being available. I mean, to be honest, obviously it is a compliment, but Concrete has been very good at being available. I haven't seen once till this very day that I haven't been able to reach someone. I mean, you're a very busy guy, and I know that sometimes you're traveling, you're on the road, or you're doing a podcast, interviews, job site walks, and even if I can't reach you on the phone, you could. If I call you, you don't answer, shoot me a text. Hey, what's going on? You're always there. So is Dustin, and so is the rest of the guys. I mean, there hasn't been a single occasion that I felt like I've been left alone, right?
They're isolated, yeah.
Yeah, and that goes a long way, because if I need an answer, I know that there's someone there to give me either an answer or put me in the right direction so I can get it, which is good.
I would say for you, I mean, for us, you kind of kicked us off pretty hardcore into it, because you're like that. You're like a bad habit. You created a bunch of other bad habits. Like we have a remote project manager that you really came in as a strong performer and showed us what we could do in this arrangement, and then that led us to a remote assistant. We have a remote writer. We have a remote video, not videographer, but a remote HubSpot CRM specialist and stuff. And all these are full-time remote positions. And during the recruiting phase, looking for people, it's like wherever there's internet, there's a potential candidate. And I think that's what people think, that when you're thinking about an outsourced position or a remote virtual position, people are like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to teach them everything. I mean, candidates that we've come across have been retired, that have been major, players in large companies and small companies and things like that. And they're just retired and they're looking to, get time, but they want to stay in their cabin, or they want to stay in their condo. They want to do stuff just like what you're saying. They want to be able to be at home. Or we've had people that have, disabilities where, being able to be out at job sites and doing stuff like that is not an option for them, but they love the industry, they love the trade, and they want to be a part of it. And this opens up doors for them to be able to be there. And that's great talent that's readily available to you, worldwide. I think you do have to think about the time zones. You have to be prepared for that, though.
Talent and experience too. That's the other thing. There is if you work in a niche type of industry, and the amount of people in your designated area are going to be very limited. Once you open it up to people be working remotely from you, all of a sudden, I mean, if you just wanted to look within the US, you have the amount of people available to you. Just it's an amazing amount. There's talent out there, and there's willingness, and there's people out there that are going to either change your company or change the way you work for the better, which is amazing. Yeah.
If you're looking for 1 in 1,000 and you're looking for them right within 20 miles of your house, there's not but so many thousands. There's a bunch. There's not that many. When you open it up in, say, the whole United States, you have 300 million people to choose from now. I think probably 2/3 of them are underage, but still. But then you move out further and you go worldwide, you get into 7 billion people. There's a whole lot higher likelihood of you finding that perfect match for your company when you can do something like that.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's awesome, Carlos. You got any wise parting words or anything where you're like, oh my gosh, if you're a contractor and you're contemplating giving this a try, what would you, what's the thing you're like, absolutely do this one thing?
Give it a chance. The only possible outcome that you're going to get out of doing or hiring a remote person is good things, especially if you haven't tried it before. And the other thing is, make sure that whoever you hire has a internet redundancy. So, because that's a must. That's your first tool. So those two things would be my
and I would add on to it and say, don't put any less patience, less tolerance, or lower or higher expectations just because it's remote. Don't hire a remote position and then look for failure. Do it just like, we've all made bad hires. There isn't anybody that hasn't made a bad hire. And, sometimes you just have to own that. And that can happen remote just as easily as it can happen in person. But do the same interview process, do the same, filtering and culling of people so that you can really get that right fit. And then understand, yes, there's going to be a transition where you have to work remotely. You got to figure out how to manage that. But you got to figure that out for everybody, no matter what. There's always that initial break-in time of everybody finding their groove. And so you just can't look at remote and just with don't try it if the expectation is failure. There's no point wasting everybody's time.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're another employee. The only difference is that you're not going to see them come through the door on a daily basis. Another piece of advice that I would love to throw in there is something that Concreate has done very well, is make sure that you have them around as much as you can. I mean, I go to Richmond at least 3 times a year, which to me is a great experience because, obviously being able to build that relationship in person with the team is a great advantage. Just because though that's how you create a better relationship. Yeah, we talk on a daily basis, but being able to be there physically makes a world of difference.
And then you finally get to get real Mexican food, because that's what we have here. There.
So true.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, dude, this is not Mexican food yet. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not authentic. No, that's awesome. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you working on the Concreate. Appreciate all that you do. And I look forward to talking to you again, probably in like 10 minutes about something else that I'm probably supposed to be owing you.
Yeah, no, of course, it's been a pleasure. It's actually been a pleasure working with you all. It is a pleasure, and I'm gonna be seeing you on the next one.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carlos. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Indeed.
Thanks for listening to Get the Intel. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.